All right, what's going on, everyone? I'm Zero, and welcome back to Zero Two, where today we've got another meta snapshot for you. It's been a minute. I took a little bit off, both for vacation and also to give Blue Eyes the time to settle in the meta a little bit. I wasn't really sure where it would fall, whether it would be as good as it was hyped up to be, and so I wanted to make sure we had some solid tournament results, have that all shake out before we jumped into all of that. But now that we've had some time, we can clearly see that Blue Eyes has done very well. I don't think anyone was projecting it for that to supplant Ryzeal or Maliss, but it slotted right into the third best deck slot where a lot of people thought it would be. And so I'm excited to talk about it today because we haven't gotten the chance to do so. But we've also got a ton of other decks we haven't gotten the chance to really look at yet. Ryzeal Mitsurugi, I believe, was a deck we hadn't had a chance to really talk about because we haven't talked about anything since the Mitsurugi cards came out. Mermail Atlantean has seen a smattering of success at both the YCS and regional level, as people are really excited with what that deck can do, especially post Suda and its support. The Fire King deck, and as a strategy, has made some popular returns. Dinkabooey famously won YCS Birmingham with the deck, and it's a really exciting option to play right now, mainly because it plays so well around the Bystials and Fuolos and other popular hand traps. And then looks like White Forest has also crept its way back in. I know that there's some new White Forest spells that were released in Suda that are propelled it back up, because now I can play a nice mishmash with the Bellstar lore stuff. So I'm excited to take a look at that deck list as well. Sorry for the delay, sorry for the wait, but without further ado, let's jump in and start looking at these decks. Ryzeal. Probably not too much to talk about, except for the fact that there are really two main variants of Ryzeal floating around. You've got the Ryzeal Pure variants and the Ryzeal Fiendsmith variants. I do believe that the Ryzeal Fiendsmith variants tend to be more popular in the America regions, and the Ryzeal Pure variants seem to have seen some more success in the European regions. Why that is, I don't know. There's do tend to be some sort of differences and deck choices and playstyle preferences between the regions. This is certainly not the first time we've seen this kind of dichotomy, but it is interesting to see how it shakes out. As for the ratios, they've been pretty standard since Ryzeal's release, and not much has changed. You play 3 ice, 3 X, 3 sword in almost every list. You could consider cutting sword down to 2, but in my opinion, sword is a mandatory 3 of, just as a fantastic extender and searcher. You play the Bonfire to search them. Soon, with the release of Maze, you'll also get to play the 7th Tachyon stuff to search them. But for now, you still play the 1 Node, the 1 Cross. The school of thought is really out on whether or not to play plugins. Some people play 1, some people cut it entirely. Plasma Hole, the school of thought is definitely in that you really don't play it. I mean, it looks like some people are playing it, but the vast majority of lists I've seen haven't been playing the Plasma Hole. Mainly just because of the advent of Eclipse Twins. It's been super popular, and it kind of allows you to recur and re-Xyz summon the same way that Ryzeal Plasma Hole would have allowed you to recover in previous iterations. And you can see it says that Eclipse Twins only has a 50% usage rating. I was hovering it over before. That's because it's sometimes played at 2 of in lists, almost as equal in frequency as the 1 of option. That's how strong it is. We'll definitely talk about it here when we get there. But looking back at the main deck, I guess there's actually really not much to talk about. I mean, the Fiendsmith ratios have been the same for as long as they've been in the game. The people who are opting to play Fiendsmith are typically playing the full package, so that's like 3 Engraver, 2 Tract, 1 Luri, Lacrima, and a Fiendsmith in Paradise. The Fiendsmith in Paradise has now become the standard in all of the larger Fiendsmith packages, giving you some nice interruption options. Especially if you get hand trapped or stopped on your main Fiendsmith plays, you typically still get to the Requiem and the Lacrima, which can dump the Paradise in your opponent's turn and still turn Desiree into an interruption. But yeah, the main deck really hasn't changed all that much. I mean, Metaltronus is something that's popular that hopefully we'll talk about in the main deck text option. I'm sure it'll be there. But in the extra deck, they're still on the 2 detonators, still on the 1 duo drive. Some people play 2, most play 1. If you're playing the pure variant, I guess you play 2. The Meteorologic Aggregator is still very strong. Eclipse Twins is a new card released in Supreme Darkness that really catapulted this deck from already being the best deck to probably inarguably the best deck, just due to the amount of recursion that this card gives you. You can ignore most of the text on this card. The only important part is the last part that says that when it's sent to the graveyard, You can target 2 other rank 4 or lower EZs in your graveyard, special one of them, and attach the other to it as material. So this means that if you're able to dump it and put it under a detonator during your first turn combo, if somehow your opponent removes your detonator from the field and sends it to the graveyard, your Eclipse Twins can then trigger to re-special summon back the detonator and equip an Xyz under it as material, typically your Duo Drive or your Abyss Dweller or something like that. It can also be used to reset your Abyss Dweller, because Abyss Dweller is arguably the strongest card in Ryzeal at the moment. They set it up very frequently. It's very good into the Fiendsmith lines. It's very good into some of the rogue options like Mermail and Fire King. And so this card on top of the Detonator end board can be absolutely game-winning. And even if your opponent has a way to out the Abyss Dweller, if you can just equip Strings, bring it black, and use it again, it can be very frustrating to play against. Trying to look through the extra deck, see if there's any other cool techs. There really aren't many. Most of the Ryzeal extra decks are pretty standard. You just play a pretty heavy rank 4 lineup if you're on the pure variant with stuff like Tornado Dragon and Paguska, Exciton Knight. You play a more streamlined package if you're playing the Requiem and Fiendsmith cards because you need space for all the different Fiendsmith tools that you're playing. All in all, though, the deck is really solid. It's still the best deck, and I expect people to continue playing it for the foreseeable future until the ban list comes. But this is not a ban list discussion, so we'll go ahead and move on. I guess we can take a look at a sample deck list. We'll take a look at this first place list from the Team 3v3, and we can see this is a pure Ryzeal list that was on all the ratios we talked about. Solemn Strike is seeing a lot of play right now. Hopefully we'll get to talk about that in the main deck decks as an answer to both Maliss and Ryzeal, but an exciting card to be seen here, but nothing all too special. Alrighty. Moving on. Let's go ahead and talk about Maliss. Maliss, the other dog in the fight for the best deck. A lot of people still do see Ryzeal as the best deck. By representation and top cut performance, it is definitely the best deck, but that does not mean that Maliss is any sort of slouch. I think it is right up there. It's kind of a 1A, 1B when you're talking about Ryzeal and Maliss for what's the best deck in the format. This deck is absurdly crazy. It's got a lot of fantastic resiliency options because all of the Maliss monsters can summon themselves back when they're banished. It has some fantastic grind game options with like summoning back from graveyard and some searching potential. Those dodge all of their traps, allow them to dodge hand traps. They play all the Bestials, both as some offensive hand traps against your opponent, but as also combo options because they can banish their own stuff to continue their own plays. Just an absolutely crazy deck. As far as ratios go, it's been pretty much solved for most players at least. You play the 3 of White Rabbit, the 3 of Dormouse, and most people are on 2 Chessy Cat. Looks like more than I'm expecting we're playing 3 Chessy Cat, so maybe it hasn't been fully solved, but for most lists I'm seeing Chessy Cats at 2 of. You play a pretty hefty Bestial package with at least the 3 Drewsworm and the Magnemite. Typically I see 3 Baldrake also in lists. They play a really beefy Bestial package because of how strong and how well these cards synergize together. They're really not much on Fiendsmith. I do see some Fiendsmith cards down there just because people are trying to put Fiendsmith in everything, but I think that the deck plays best as like a pure cyber spam pile. Stuff like Dotscaper sees a solid amount of play in lists. But even without Dotscaper, like, you just have so many powerful extra deck tools, White Binder being fantastic graveyard removal, Heart's Cryptor being an on-field banish, Red Ransom being an extra consistency piece, getting you to your field spell for extra extension, and Recursion as well. Just an overall super strong archetype. I guess their only change that they've gotten since the release of Supreme Darkness has been the inclusion of Abao Aku in the extra deck. A decent number of Maliss players are deciding to play Abao Aku. It's an extremely strong Link 4 option that you can make as part of the end board that allows you to summon back light and dark monsters from your graveyard, allowing you to either bring back any of your Link 3s or continue on your combos. Just a really strong monster to make at the 4 slot. But yeah, again, not too much to talk about with Maliss. We've looked at this deck pretty extensively in the previous Meta Snapshot. So I think we'll just go ahead and move on to some of the more exciting decks that we haven't gotten the chance to look at yet. Blue Eyes, it's here. It's the best deck. Not really. It's probably the third best deck. But it is a extremely strong meta contender that you need to be aware and prepared for. Surely a lot of folks who have been going to locals have seen a ton of new players and returning players and old players alike all opening the structure deck, building the deck. When we're talking about Blue Eyes, for any sort of competitive success, we're mostly talking about the Primite Blue Eyes builds. If you look through this list here, you can see they're all on the Primite engine. There's one guy who looks like it topped with a Primite engine and a Buster Blader engine as well, which some people tout as an alternative engine option that you can be playing in the deck. But for the most part, they're on Primite Blue Eyes. So some cards that we haven't gotten a chance to talk about. There's the new card, Maiden of White, which is a level 1 light tuner that does pretty much everything for the deck. While it's in hand, you can discard it to place True Light face up from your deck, which for those unaware is an older Blue Eyes card, but it allows you to either summon Blue Eyes from hand or grave or set a spell trap that mentions Blue Eyes from your deck, so absolutely insane consistency. That's not all, though. While it's in your graveyard, if you special summon a Blue Eyes, you get to summon this card back from the graveyard, so it's also a free extender that helps you go into your level 9 synchros alongside Blue Eyes. And then if that weren't enough, it has a third effect, where if it's targeted by a card effect on the field, or for an attack, and that doesn't need to be your opponent's card effect, it can be your own card effect as well, you can special summon a Blue Eyes or a level 1 light tuner. So even more extension and bodies on the board. Absolutely custom card. Part of the new support that makes the deck go great, and I would argue that might not even be the best new piece of support the deck's gotten. I think that would be Wishes for Eyes of Blue, which is their new spell card that they play. You can discard a card, add a level 1 light tuner, and a spell trap that mentions Blue Eyes from your deck to your hand. So this is a discard 1, search 2. It can search your Maiden. It can search your Sage, which on normal adds any level 1 light tuner from deck to hand. So this is another fantastic normal for the deck that gets you to your Maiden. It also searches Effect Veiler, which is like a searchable hand trap in the deck. The deck can typically search 1 or 2 or 3 of that over the course of the combo, because you can also add that off Wishes for Eyes of Blue if you already have all your rest of your combo pieces. And then additionally, while it's in your graveyard, you can banish it and then equip a Blue Eyes with a fusion from your extra deck, which is typically Neo Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, which when it's in your graveyard, you can banish it when your opponent targets a Blue Eyes monster you control, negate that effect, and destroy it. Adds another layer of protection to the deck, help you go into Tyrant Dragon, because all that requires is a Blue Eyes equipped with a fusion monster. Really just all in all facilitates so many plays for the deck. An absolutely bonkers custom card. I see some people are playing it at less than 3. Play this card at 3. This card's nuts. They're on 2 Blue Eyes. That's been pretty standard. Some people play 3 for the swag. Some people play 1. I don't see how you could possibly get away with playing 1. You need 2 for most of the main combos and consistently lossy lines, so 2 is an almost mandatory inclusion. You could definitely play 3 if you want to be Seto Kaiba, but 2 is kind of the statistically optimal ratio. Another new spell they got is Roar of the Blue-Eyed Dragons, which is a normal spell that special summons a Blue Eyes monster from your deck, graveyard, or banishment. But if you have no Blue Eyes White Dragon on the field, it has to be the OG Blue Eyes. That's fine, because most of the time you are just going for the OG Blue Eyes. And that's nice because it allows you to extend if you don't find another way to get to your Blue Eyes. This is searchable off of Wishes. It's settable off of True Light. So there's tons of ways to get to this, which is why you only play 1 of it. And you get to extend with Blue Eyes, which is really nice. It has a grave effect that allows you to fusion summon, which can come up if you need a hard make Tyrant Dragon, but most of the time you're just using it for the summon from deck or banishment or graveyard. You're on 1 Mausoleum White. This is an older card, but it's now searchable off the new Link one, which I guess we'll talk about now, which just requires any level 4 or lower dragon or spellcaster. And on Link, someone gets to search for the Mausoleum of White, which is the field spell. And then additionally, you contribute this card to special summon a Blue Eyes monster from your hand or graveyard. But if you special summon a non-vanilla, it has to be negated and it can't attack. But most of the time, again, you're just using this to summon Blue Eyes, because Blue Eyes facilitates all your main combos with stuff like Maiden. It's your level 8 to make all your level 9 synchros. Super, super impactful. But Mausoleum also helps you get Blue Eyes into rotation because of its second effect that allows you to target a monster you control and send a normal monster from deck to graveyard to boost its stats. You don't even care about the boosted stats most of the time, because all this is doing is getting a Blue Eyes from your deck into rotation, which is really, really nice. Because having it in your graveyard means you can summon it back off True Light. It means you can summon it back off of Spirit. There's just a lot of great reasons why you'd want Blue Eyes in the graveyard. But that's not all, because additionally this gives you an extra normal of a level 1 Light Tuner, meaning that you get to normal summon Sage again. Because even if you didn't start your combo off with Sage, you're typically searching Sage off of the wishes, and then Sage on normal gets to search for another level 1 Light Tuner, which can be Effect Veiler as additional interruption. And I think the best part about Sage is that it's not a hard once per turn. At least the normal summon effect isn't. So you can normal summon this as many times as you're able to in a turn. If you open 2 and Mausoleum, you can turn both of those into searches. That can search for your Maiden, that can search for your Effect Veiler. Sage is an absolutely cracked card, and an integral part in combo with Mausoleum of Light. We talked about True Light. I want to go through all the Blue Eyes stuff before we get to the Primite stuff, so let's go ahead and talk about the last Blue Eyes card that they play, which is Majesty of the White Dragons. It's a new trap card that lets you, on resolution, show up to 3 Blue Eyes White Dragons and destroy that many cards your opponent controls. Something that I see people getting wrong a lot of the time when they're playing this deck is they try and reveal or tell you how many they're showing you as like a cost for the card. This card has no cost. You reveal and destroy as part of the effect. So if you've got some stealthy Blue Eyes in hand, you can not show them to your opponent, just activate this card. They might assume you're only popping 1 because you might only have 1 in your graveyard or on your field, but if you can get a second pop in, it's not like they can just respond after you've started revealing the Blue Eyes to you. So make sure you're playing with this card correctly. Don't reveal early. Let your opponent respond to this before you show any Blue Eyes. But make it clear to your opponent you're doing that. Don't try and like cheese them or cheat them with like, oh, well, now that I've showed you my Blue Eyes, you can't respond. Like, give them ample time to respond, but do understand that it does not reveal for cost. It also has a graveyard effect that allows you to ritual summon. Most builds aren't even playing a ritual monster. I don't even think a single build on here is playing one. You shouldn't really be unless you're playing this deck for fun, which in case, of course, you totally can, but the main effect is that pop effect. And that's really all the Blue Eyes monsters you play. Some people are playing Eo Kaiser, which is like a tuner that can modulate levels, which can come up. Some people are playing Blue Eyes Jet Dragon, which is like a neat battle trick that can modulate, or it interacts well with the Ryzeal matchup because it's a way to out-detonator. But all in all, I think that you're pretty solid with the Blue Eyes cards we just listed. Moving on, we'll talk about the Primite engine, which is arguably equally important in the deck. Super simple and straightforward. We've got Primite Aether Barrel Dragon, which on normal gets to set a Primite spell from deck. So it's just a searcher. And then it has this weird middle effect where you can tribute it and dump a normal from deck to graveyard. You never do that because you're always using this guy as your normal summon and then linking it off for spirit. And then during your standby phase, if you have a normal in your field or graveyard, you can add this card from grave to hand. Please note that this is during your standby phase. They incorrectly printed the card when they first released it to say during the standby phase. So if someone at Locals tries to tell you that it works during both player standby phases, it does not. Please have them read the errata that they released online, but it only does work during your own standby phase to coincide with its effect from the OCG. What you're setting off Aether Barrel is most of the time Lordly Load, which is a continuous spell that on activation gets to add a Primite card from deck to hand. So the Aether Barrel can search the Lordly Load. If you start with the Lordly Load, it can search the Aether Barrel. And then both of them can search your other Primite spell, which I guess we'll skip to now real quick. We'll come back to Lordly Load because it has a couple of other important effects, but Drill Beam is what you're hoping to end with, is just a quick effect negate, basically. You reveal a Primite card or normal monster in hand, or if you control a level 5 or higher Primite or normal monster, which you almost always will have access to thanks to True Light summoning back Blue Eyes, you can target a card on the field and negate its effects and banish it. This is an insanely strong piece of removal and negation, and if that wasn't crazy enough, during your main phase, if you control a Primite monster, you get to reset this card. So Aether Barrel adds itself back, you can just normal summon it again, search another Lordly Load, reset the Drill Beam, and every single turn you're going to get consistent negation access in Drill Beam. This is an insane have in the grind game, and simplified game states, the Primate engine can win games on its own. It's so hard for your opponent to overcome all the advantage you're generating off the Primate cards. Just absolutely nuts. But back to Lordly Load, I've skipped over arguably its equally most important effect, because this effect allows you to play around Nibiru. But this lets you declare a normal monster, special a normal monster with that same name from hand, deck, or graveyard. But it does lock you out of using special summon monster effects for the rest of this turn after doing so. This is absolutely insane. It makes it so that you can summon a Blue Eyes, trigger your Maiden, extend further if you want to. But most of the time, your combos will end with this card effect still live, so that way if your opponent Nibiru's you can still just play through it. You use Lordly Load, summon back Blue Eyes, Maiden will trigger, summoning self back, and then you can still make the Spirit Dragon you were going to end on anyways. This card's absolutely stupid. It's a custom card, in my opinion, and these three combined just feel so fluid in Blue Eyes. Absolutely one of the reasons to play the deck. So definitely worth the pickup. And both these are getting reprinted pretty soon, or I guess Aether Barrel is not, but I know that Lordly Load is getting reprinted in the near-ish future. So for those who are slightly priced out of it, hope is coming. But yeah, so that was the main deck. All of the other slots are filled in with non-engine. That's stuff like Imperm Ash. They can play Purge. They play Bystials because you can search like Aether Barrel or Blue Eyes off of the Magnuma, which is really nice. But the deck has a ton of non-engine space. Even with these two engines backed in here, they're still relatively small. So do with that what you will. In the extra deck, they play 3 Spirit Dragon, or 2 Spirit Dragon, it looks like in most lists. I like 3. I think 3 does come up, but 2 can also work. Most of your combo lines only ever go through 2 anyways, but the third one definitely comes up in the grind game, so keep that in mind when deck building. They play the Tyrant Dragon as both an OTK machine and a way to reset your trap cards that you've already used, which is nice. Blue Eyes Ultimate Spirit Dragon is a new monster that was just released that is something you can tag out into from Spirit Dragon and is a Omni Negate for an effect that's activated on the field. And then additionally, it prevents cards from banishing your opponent from banishing cards in your graveyard, so you can't be Bystialed while this is face up. This is important to know because if they try and Bystial you while you have Spirit Dragon on the field, you can quick effect tag out the Spirit into Blue Eyes Ultimate Spirit, and then the Bystial effect will fizzle because this doesn't activate, this just applies continuously. And then last but not least, if it's destroyed by battle or card effect, which it will be in the end phase due to Spirit Dragon's effect, you get to summon back a level or a light dragon monster from your graveyard. So that can be your Spirit, that can be Blue Eyes if you want to summon back Maiden. Just an all-in-all crazy card. Definitely play this as 1 copy. Non-cuttable. They're on Seals, they're on the Neo Blue Eyes Ultimate, which you talked about. There's another new Light Dragon Synchro that was released in Supreme Darkness that we need to talk about here called Lightstorm Dragon. This is something you tag out into off of Spirit Dragon, or they can hard make it because it's a level 9, which is really easy for them to do. And then if it's special summoned, you get to target spell and traps your opponent controls up to the number of normal monsters in your graveyard +1 and destroy them. So typically you have 1, maybe probably even 2 Blue Eyes in rotation at all times, and so this is a pop 3, pop 2. This is just all in all insane. It's a way this deck deals with back row decks. And back row decks have a really poor matchup into this deck thanks to this card. Absolutely bonkers. And then it also does have a destruction effect if you summon it off the Spirit, and then it gets destroyed in the end phase, or it just gets destroyed normally. You can target a spell trap in your graveyard. It cannot be activated unless you control a normal monster, but you get to reset it. So another way to recur stuff like Roar if you hadn't to get Roar back, or if somehow you've lost part of your engine that you need to get back, this can absolutely help you get back into it. Some lists are on Typhon, Moot Black Rose, Lina, SP. There's a Crimson Dragon package you can play because Crimson Dragon's a light dragon, so you can tag into it off of Spirit. If you have 2 spirits on board, you can tag out into the Ultimate Spirit and Crimson Dragon can target the Ultimate Spirit to go into like a Blazar or a Siffer. This deck has some fantastic combo lines available to it. It feels very strong, and it's no surprise to me that it has made its way up into the 3rd best deck slot. Moving on, we'll quickly take a look at Ryzeal Mitsurugi. I don't remember if we've had the chance to take a look at the Mitsurugi cards. I don't think we have, because we haven't gone over them in depth before, so we will take a chance to take a look at these here. But the Ryzeal ratios are roughly the same. You're just more likely to play only 2 sword because you need the main deck space for the Mitsurugi stuff. But they play 3 copies of Mitsurugi Prayers, which on activation can tribute a reptile, so you apply both of the effects. Otherwise, it's just a normal, like, you can just apply one of them if you'd like, without tributing. But that's important because they tribute as cost to activate this, so this can help dodge stuff like Imperm and Veiler on some of your reptile monsters, especially stuff like King of the Feral Imps. But in any case, it adds a Mitsurugi from deck to hand, and then also you can special summon a Mitsurugi from hand or grave. They happen in sequence, so you can add and then summon. Absolutely crazy card, definite 3 of. Another crazy 3 of that you play is Mitsurugi Ritual, which lets you ritual summon any reptile ritual monster. The requirements being that you either have to have the materials in hand or the ritual monster in hand, but if you have one of those 2 conditions, you can use the others from deck, which is crazy. You can either ritual summon the ritual monster from deck, or you can use materials up to 2 rituals from deck to summon the ritual from hand. Bonkers ritual spell. Absolutely crazy. Certainly one of the reasons why you want to play the deck. They play 2 of Saji. Sometimes they play 3. Sometimes you play 2. Looks like the prevailing opinion's 2, but you can definitely play 3 of it if you want, because on normal or special, this gets to add a Mitsurugi spell trap from deck to hand. So this is a lot of times what you're searching off of prayers. You get to go into Saji, and then Saji can search your ritual, which is kind of the main bread and butter combo. Additionally, if another card you control will be destroyed by a battle or card effect, you can tribute this instead. So if it somehow gets stuck on your end board, it can protect some of your rituals. Speaking of your rituals, Ame no Murakamo. I'm going to butcher all these names, so I apologize. But this card is a quick effect. Destroy all monsters your opponent controls when it's summoned. I guess not technically a quick effect, but you get to ritual summon. You get to summon this back on your opponent's turn, which is just an insane board wipe to have. Additionally, while it's on the field, if your opponent activates a card or effect, you can make them discard a card, otherwise it's negated. So it's a hand rip at worst, Omni negate at best, and then if it's tributed, you get to add a Mitsurugi card and then summon it back. So that's not only a searcher for the deck, but it's often tributed as the material for Futsu no Mitama, which is the other ritual, which allows you to reborn a reptile monster when it is when your opponent's special summons a monster. So that's a way to summon back Ame no on your opponent's turn. Additionally, once per if it's tributed, it does the same thing that the Ame no does, where it adds a Mitsurugi card and then summons itself back. So these are just really hard to get rid of. They're really sticky, and they form a nice concrete like loop, especially with the Mitsurugi ritual. And then Kusanagi is the last one, which on normal or special gets to add one back from grave or banishment. So this is a nice piece you play as a one of search if you need to recur any of your pieces that got banished, because that can come up. And then some lists are also on the Nightsword Serpent, which is a card that allows you to special summon itself when it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect. That counts with Mitsurugi Ritual, so it's basically a free 4 extender for Ryzeal that you can plus off of if you use Mitsurugi Ritual. Then moving on to the trap. If your opponent activates a card or effect, you can tribute a level 5 hour ritual, negate it, and destroy it. So this is an Omni negate. And then you can banish it from your graveyard and summon back a reptile monster, but you have to tribute another monster you control. So you can only use one effect per turn, only once that turn, but it is absolutely crazy, both interruption and recursion. Just an all-in-all really strong card. But yeah, outside of that, there's no extra deck portions to Mitsurugi. Nothing changes in the extra deck except for the King of the Feral Imps, which is a generic rank 4 that allows you to search a reptile monster. So it's how you bridge from your Ryzeal stuff to your Mitsurugi stuff. You make the Feral Imps. Feral Imps can grab you the Saji, and then with the Saji, you're off to the races. Crazy combo, crazy deck. A lot of people are finding that it's a bit weaker than Ryzeal Pure, just because Ryzeal Pure has more space for non-engine. But this deck is still very powerful. You can expect to see it at all the way up to the YCS level, so keep it in mind when doing prep and deck building. Moving on, we're going to take a look at Mermail Atlantean, or like a water good stuff pile, because there's a lot more in here than just the Mermail and Atlanteans, even though they do form the core of the deck. For those unfamiliar, like Mermail has been a long-standing, Mermail Atlantean has been a long-standing like water combo deck that is played around with for years and years, but has fallen out of favor just due to the fact that power creep has made it close to unplayable. But now they've gotten a lot of great new support that has pushed them back up into the forefront of combo ability and playability. And there are multiple different builds of this deck, so we'll have to kind of hurry through a lot of the core of the deck, a lot of the older cards, and we will talk about more so the flexibility you have when building a deck list surrounding these cards. So, taking a look at the list, they're always on 3 Neptibus. This is the best starter in the deck. While it's on the field, you can send an Atlantean for cost from deck to add an Atlantean from deck to hand. Not only is this a searcher, but it triggers all your Atlanteans from deck, which is crazy. And then if it's sent to the graveyard to activate an effect, it also is a monster reborn for an Atlantean, just an absolute custom card. Play this at maximum copies. Mermail Shadow Scout is also an Atlantean, so you can send this off of Nephthybis, and when it's sent, it gets to special summon a level 4 or lower Atlantean from deck, or a Mermail from deck, to be fair. It can do either. It's an absolutely crazy card. An insane payoff for both Nephthybis or any other water effect that you're using it as a discard for. And then additionally, it itself has a discard effect where you can discard it and another Wander monster to make water monsters you control become 7. Kind of comes up to make some of your rank 7s, but most of the time you're just using this as send fodder for its send effect. Dragoons needs no interruption, or no introduction. It probably does demand some interruption from your opponent. But when it's sent to the graveyard to activate a water monster, add a Sea Serpent from deck to hand. That's an auto once per turn. You can do that as many times as you can send Dragoons from deck to graveyard. Or field to graveyard, or detach it as a material to graveyard. This card's crazy. Absolutely bonkers. Play this at maximum copies. Abysteus, extremely strong. Special summons himself for free from hand by discarding a water. That, of course, does as cost, so it triggers your Dragoons, triggers your Shadow Scout, and then when summoned, gets to add a level 4 or lower Mermail from deck to hand. Typically searching for Abyss Pike, which is one of your best starters, because on normal or special, discard a water to add a level 3 water from deck to hand. What are you searching? Most often, Abyss Rhine the Atlantean Spirit, which is also a Mermail card, conveniently. Which you contribute this card from hand and one other Atlantean or Mermail from hand or field. Take a level 7 fish, Sea Serpent, or Aqua, and either add it or special it. Locks you into waters, but who cares, because you're only on waters. And then additionally, it gives you some play on your opponent's turn, allowing you to banish it to draw a card. You do have to discard a card to do so, but frequently you're discarding like an Atlantean. Could be heavy infantry to give you a pop. Could be Mermail Shadow Squad to give you someone from deck. You're just getting so much advantage off of this card. It's absolutely crazy. If that wasn't all, they have Deep Sea Minstrel, which is searchable off of their main combo because it's a Sea Serpent. It allows you to discard this card and a water monster from hand to look at your opponent's hand and banish it until the end phase. Banish a card from it until the end phase. So not only do you get to remove a hand trap that your opponent might have been saving for something important that you were trying to do, and assuming you use this pretty early on in your combo, but it also gets to give you complete hand knowledge of the rest of their hand traps. So you can know exactly what they are going to try and interrupt you with. Additionally, you can know exactly what they're going to try and build their own board with on turn, 2 onward. Absolutely crazy card, an insane part of the combo, and one of the cards that people are actually trying to get hit from the deck. Moving on, this deck has even more great combo opportunity as well with Poseidon the Storming Atlantean. This is an insanely strong going second card, allowing you to send a Atlantean or Mermail from deck to graveyard as cost to target a card your opponent controls and bounce it. So not only does this trigger your Dragoons, your Shadow Scout, but it also acts as a way to remove a piece of your opponent's board from the field. You can also use it to combo first because you can special summon it from your hand or by sending a water monster from hand or field to the graveyard. So it can either combo and be a 7 that you use turn 1 proactively, or you can use it defensively going second and an insane piece of removal. Just a great card all around. Moon Glacia is a card that some people are playing, some people aren't. I think the two that are interchangeable are Moon Glacia and Barrier Statue. If you're playing one, you're probably not playing the other because these are the two big payoffs. Moon Glacia, an older card that allows you to rip water or cards out of your opponent's hand if you summon it, and you have to summon it while you only have 5 waters engraved, which is super easy to modulate with all your different waters. And then you're also typically on the Deep Sea Coelacanth package, which is a card that says discard a card, summon as many level 4 or lower fish from deck as possible. That means that you get to summon extra level 4s like Abyss Pike. You get to summon out your Gelatinous Reptolphin, which is a tuner. Just all in all, very nice piece of board spam that helps you make your Bahamut Sharks to go into Toad. It helps you get a lot of link fodder, so you can climb up to stuff like Abyss Lacia and Coral Anemone. Just some crazy, crazy stuff, all in all. There's some other tech options too. We can't talk about all of them right now, but some people are playing the Abyss Sting equip spell that just got released. It's basically a Monster Reborn. It's searchable off of your Nephthybis Link 3, which lets you add a Abyss Spell Trap from deck to hand when a water monster is sent to the graveyard. so that can act as an extra extension for your combos. Some of the main end board pieces for the deck are stuff like Totally Awesome, stuff like Abyss Dweller, stuff like Abyss Gaios, which is a negate for all cards your opponent controls would have less attack than this card. They have Abyss Keeper as like an extender in the extra deck for your fish monsters. They can play the Deep Sea Prima Donna package as a way to consistently get the barrier statue out of deck. Because this, in combination with Deep Sea Minstrel, is a guaranteed way to have an opponent have a banished card, which is crazy. Yeah, the deck is just really good at spamming monsters on the board. It's relatively hand trap resilient. It just does have some breaking issues where if you don't open enough ways to get to your Neptibus or your Abyss or one of your other discard outlets, you can struggle to get off to the races. But other than that, it fills itself up with some hand traps. It's just an all-in-all solid deck that you can definitely expect to see at some of your high-level tournaments. Continuing onward, we've got Pure Fire King. Dinkabui put this deck back on the map after his win at YCS Birmingham, which we can see here, though it's definitely had a smattering of regional success since then, so it's certainly not like a one-off occurrence. This deck is very strong. And it's just pure Fire King. We've looked at Fire King before in its iterations with Snake Eye. The changes that we've mainly made here are playing 3 Pawnex instead of 1, because this is now a starter in the pure variant. You play 3 copies of Fire King Garunix because you want to be triggering this as early and often as possible. 3 Olkanix is now essentially mandatory because of how good of a starter this is. And then you're definitely still playing the main other ratios of like 2 Sanctuary to search the 1 island. Most of the lists are on a lot of copies of Spyburn, which is a fantastic piece of it going first board as extra destruction removal, but it's also good going second to help clear boards. And it destroys your Fire Kings, which trigger all their effects. Just a super strong card that I'm kind of surprised took this long to see play, but I guess when teched in with Snake Eye, you weren't really lacking for ways to interact with your opponent. But I think the main advantages to this deck are that it plays pretty low to the ground. It doesn't play into the hand traps like Fuelos, or it can play under Fuelos. It can play through a lot of hand traps like Imperm and Effect Veiler, thanks to Kieran. And it doesn't summon more than 5 times for its main combos, so it plays under Nibiru. And the extra deck is mostly throwaway. A lot of the lists are playing Extravagance, so the only important pieces that you'll want to see are your Garunix, which is one of your main interruptions going first, your Promethean Princess, which is one of your main follow-up options, and a great going first and second tool. And then Hita can also be nice to revive your opponent's Ash to go into the Promethean Princess and stuff. Outside of that, you're playing pretty much utility extra deck with stuff like SP, Almirage comes up because it's a Fire Link 1, Relinquished Anima can come up, Typhon comes up a solid amount. I mean, we saw it pop off in Dinka's top 8, top 4 run. Yeah, but other than that, it's a pretty standard Fire extra deck. Not too much to talk about. And it doesn't really matter because you don't really care what gets banished off of extra. The deck plays mostly in the main deck. But yeah, we've taken a look at Fire King. Outside of that, there's not too much special they're doing. They've just dropped the Snake Eye stuff in favor of more hand traps. Moving on, we've got White Forest. Now this is a doozy given how much stuff they play and how much stuff they try and cram into their main deck. Because there's a lot of different variants of White Forest you can be playing. You can be playing the Azamina White Forest stuff, which gives you access to Ilia Sylvia as an extra negate, but it can also help you bridge thanks to the new Simple Spoils of the White Forest, which lets you get and bridge into your White Forest plays. It can also play the Fiendsmith stuff as a way to convert a lot of those extra bodies you're able to put on board into some advantage and end board pieces and stuff like Desiree. There are still some people playing the toy package with stuff like Toy Box, Toy Tank, Toy Soldier, all of which to give you some extra bodies to synchro summon. But I think the core is stuff like LZ, stuff like Sylvie, stuff like Rusia are going to be seeing consistent play in most White Forest lists. And then the extra deck, you're filled with your core utility synchros from the White Forest stuff, like Rislilia, Silvera, Diabel. These are all the same from the last time we've looked at the list. They're on Abaku sometimes as well. but I think for the most part, there isn't too much to talk about in terms of looking at it then holistically. So let's take a look at one of the top lists. This is a Simple Spoils White Forest list, where they're using the Diabell Star in combination with Wanted as a way to get extra searchable ways to get into their Simple Spoils new spell, which gets to special summon a Fiend, Illusion, or Spellcaster from hand as an extender. And also can be a fusion spell that you can use to make something like Saint Azamina, which can be a nice piece of your board. Outside of that, they're doing pretty standard White Forest stuff. Not too much else to talk about. The Deception just fits really nicely in with the White Forest stuff, mainly because it was designed to do so. So the list plays pretty straightforward. Not much to talk about. Moving on, we have the main deck text we'll get to talk about here. And I'm happy we do see Metatronus at the bottom that we will get to talk about, which is exciting. But starting out, King of the Crop is now Ash Blossom. It used to be Imperm, but I think with the rise and advent of stuff like Fuelos, the stuff like the new Blue Eyes deck, where Wishes is so important to have that resolve. Ash Blossom is just like a mandatory inclusion in most decks. Being able to negate the mulch armies, being able to negate impactful, powerful searchers is really pivotal in the metagame at the moment, and so Ash Blossom seeing a ton of play makes a lot of sense. Imperm's still very strong, don't get me wrong. I don't think its percentage has dropped all that much. I just think Ash is like meteorically rose. But Imperm, very, very good at checking a lot of the important monster effects that are crucial to starting off combos. A lot of times against Maliss, if they don't open the best hand, you can end their turn with an Imperm on something like a Dormouse. And against like Ryzeal, sometimes hitting the Duo Drive can be enough to really stifle their plays. It being a trap card is super, super nice because it doesn't play into stuff like Ryzeal Cross or the Triple Talents or Tactics cards. Just all in all, a fantastic hand trap. Nibiru has been seeing a solid amount of play, I think largely in part due to Maliss's success. It also does a solid job into Rogue, being able to check a lot of their boards that they're putting up. But for the most part, Nibiru isn't so great in stuff like Blue Eyes. It isn't so great in stuff like Ryzeal, so I'm actually surprised to see it this high up. I mean, it's super impactful when you compare Nibiru with like one additional hand trap, but on its own, it can really flounder. And so I'll be interested to see if this percentage continues to rise or continues to fall. I don't know where it's at in its current trend. Fuelos, we know, is seeing a ton of play. 65% of decks are main decking it. No surprise. Decks love the special summon from the extra deck. Decks love the special summon from the main deck. Molcharmi Fuelos against the top decks can consistently give you like 6 draws against most of their main combos. So having this as an option and making sure that you have lines to play around it if you're going to play into it is important to prepare for in the metagame, given how prevalent it is. It's probably like the third hand trap slot you play, and honestly, if you're being forced to play fewer hand traps, you're probably more likely to play Fuelos just because of the high impact that it has. It can be an absolute turn skip against a lot of decks and a lot of hands. So keeping in mind Fuelos, keeping in mind lines around Fuelos is going to be important moving into the next couple stages of Yu-Gi-Oh! Balance is seeing a ton of play. People are having a fun time. From my understanding, I've watched a lot of deck profiles of recent like top events from various different decks like Blue Eyes and Ryzeal and Maliss. And a lot of those lists, people who are piloting those decks who did well have mentioned how much of an MVP Talents is. Getting able to get the extra draws when you need them, being able to like look at your opponent's hand and rip out their important starter when you need to, being able to steal your opponent's monster and go in for game against a board that would be otherwise hard to crack is all really, really nice. And to have that amount of flexibility and utility be packaged into one card is just insane. It feels really nice. And so a lot of people are opting to play it. Most people agree that 2 is probably the proper ratio to be playing, but I think that 2 makes a lot of sense because you don't want to draw it in multiples. The Bestials seeing a ton of play, partially due to the fact that Maliss main decks these religiously, also due to the fact that they're still really good into Fiendsmith and Blue Eyes. A Blue Eyes player, if you make sure to time this right, can significantly hurt their combos. but it's hard to bestial them correctly because they don't telegraph where you'll need to use it. There are a lot of hands where bestialing the Maiden can be correct. There are a lot of hands where bestialing the Blue Eyes OG Vanilla can be correct. But again, the Blue Eyes player can typically do a good job of masking where which of those two that they would need to hit out of their graveyard in order to stop their main combos and plays. And you need to make sure you're doing it early rather than later, because if they get to the Spirit, then these get turned off against them. So just make sure you're using your bestials effectively against Blue Eyes. Is all I'll say about that. But it is still good into Blue Eyes. It's good into the Fiendsmith stuff, like I was saying, and so that in combination with its prevalence in Maliss is going to make sure it sees a ton of play. I mean, even Blue Eyes is main decking it as well as a way to search their dragons. Effect Veiler, seeing a ton of play. Blue Eyes plays this as 3 of because it's so searchable. Other decks are using this as like the 4th, maybe 5th hand trap slot as Imperm Light. It's still nice to have some at-will monster negation. It being a monster effect is really tough, though, because it does turn on the triple tactics cards that are so popular. But it's still probably worth it. If you have the space to be playing a lot of hand traps, Effect Veiler does seem to be the consensus opinion. Although there are some additional options that maybe we'll get to talk about the side deck, but we'll get there when we get there. Call by the Grave, seeing a ton of play. Mulch Armies, stopping those, very important. Stopping the Ash Blossoms, stopping the Effect Veilers, even just hitting some of your opponent's like important Blue Eyes pieces out of the graveyard or their Fiendsmith stuff out of their graveyard can be important. Call by the Grave feels like it's in a really good spot right now. I'm kind of surprised to only see it in 51% of decks. For me, this is a mandatory inclusion as a one-of in almost every deck I'm building. So definitely a card that's seeing a ton of play. And then last, but certainly not least, a card that I'm really excited to talk about is Mellotronus. And I think this is even worth clicking on so we can take a look at the effect. Because Mellotronus is a very fun card. It's very interesting. It's a card that on release didn't see much play at all, but now that we've gotten some really strong individual boss monsters, we're able to see it being played at a relatively higher rate. And that's because you can target an opponent's monster they control, especially on a monster from your hand, deck, or extra deck that matches at least 2 of its type, attribute, and attack. But if you do that, you negate the monster's effects. And then if they have the same name, you can banish them face down. This means that a lot of people who aren't even playing Ryzeal are main decking, or I guess main extra decking, a copy of Ryzeal Detonator as a way to out it, because not only can they not activate their monster effect in response, so they can't chain the Detonator to dodge, but you can also banish the Detonator face down, which gets around its destruction protection, which is really, really nice. You can additionally play a copy of something like a Maliss Whitebinder, so it's live against Maliss. There's a lot of fantastic targets you can be playing for Mellotronus. There's a lot of wacky interactions you can find yourself in, where like you happen to have a type and an attack, or an attribute and an attack that matches one of your opponents. It's just an all-in-all really strong side deck card. Ooh, I want to be careful with what I'm clicking on here. It's not side deck even, main deck card, but you can definitely play it in the side deck too. It's just a response to the rise of Ryzeal. But yeah, moving on to the side deck. The king of the side deck. I believe this was the same last time we looked at it, but if not, it's gotten even stronger. Artifact Lancia is seeing play at 3 copies in 96% of side decks. I don't think I've seen a side deck card see this much play in as long as I can remember. Everyone pretty much ubiquitously agrees that this is a strong side deck tech. It completely shuts down your Maliss opponent's turn. This is so much so popular that some people are even playing stuff like Artifact Sanctum in the side deck to search it. It's not represented here because it doesn't have quite enough percentage, but they might also be playing stuff like Chaos Hunter to deal with the Maliss matchup. There's just so little you can do against Maliss with traditional hand traps that these like banished floodgates are pretty strong against them. And so Lancia, if you are building a side deck, this is like the #1 card to play. It's almost at such a high usage percentage people are talking about it's seeing a ban. Although I think that personally would be a mistake. Although again, I don't want to get too much into a ban list discussion here. But yeah, Lancia is just seeing an absurd play rate in the side deck, and it's an absolute mandatory inclusion. Feather Duster and Lightning Storm have seen a resurgence as an answer to Blue Eyes, and also Maliss. Maliss plays a decent amount of back row, and so Harpy's Feather Duster and Lightning Storming them can sometimes win you the game. Against Blue Eyes, if their True Light hits the graveyard, it blows up their board, which can be really inconvenient for the Blue Eyes player. And so having the Duster and Lightning Storm to check their board is really, really nice. Yeah, these are all in all just really strong cards that are generically good against Rogue as well. So expect to see these as a pretty high side deck frequency. Perilia, also seeing a ton of play. Really good into Ryzeal. Gets many, many draws off of Ryzeal. Pretty decent into Maliss because of all the Bestials they're using off of from their hand, as alongside the normal summon of their Dormouse or their White Rabbit. This can get you multiple draws. It's great into Blue Eyes. They consistently normal summon at least twice a turn, and can sometimes be forced into a scenario where they need to use Spirit to summon the Blue Eyes from hand. So Perilia can get you a lot of draws this format. I don't know if it's a main deck inclusion, but for me, it's a definite side deck inclusion. Just another potential turn skip, or at least turn limiter against a lot of the best decks. It's hard to find lines that play around normal summoning in a lot of the top decks, or at least summoning from hand. So Perilia can check those quite well and make it so your opponent needs to think twice before they go comboing into Oblivion. Moving down, Droll Lockbird is a good option in the side deck against Ryzeal. It stops a lot of the main Ryzeal searchers. Ryzeal does a lot of searching and drawing over the course of their main combo, and so shutting them down on that early can make it so that they are kind of forced into significantly more suboptimal lines that end on like no cross negate, or sometimes just a detonator pass, which is a lot more easy to deal with. That being said, it's not a like win button against them like Valencia is against Maliss. They still have lines that play around it or through it, so keep that in mind. It's not very good into Maliss. Maliss doesn't do a ton of direct searching. They do a lot of like banishing from deck to circumvent Droll, or setting directly from deck. Similarly, Blue Eyes does a lot of setting directly from deck as well, which can circumvent around it. If you can catch them on like an early Primite line, this can sometimes be irritating for the Blue Eyes player, but for the most part, they can at least set up a pretty standard board through Droll and Lockbird. But this paired with another hand trap can be pretty lethal against the Blue Eyes board, so keep that in mind. Meowls is great into Maliss. Punishes your opponent from summoning back from graveyard or banishment. This can also get you draws against Fiendsmith. Against Blue Eyes, if they're careless, they can definitely run into scenarios where they have to give you draws in their Meowls. I've played a decent amount of Blue Eyes, and if your hand is decent enough, you don't have to give them any draws, but paired with other hand traps, it can also help quite a bit. But Meowls is just really good into Maliss, another Maliss answer. If you don't feel comfortable playing the Chaos Hunter as a way to fully shut out Maliss, and you want something that's a bit more flexible into other decks, especially something like a Fire King or a Mermail, which does summon also a decent amount from graveyard, Meowls is probably the more versatile option. Solemn Strike gets to see a ton of play in side decks right now due to its strength going first. It's one of the ways that you can kind of guarantee or shut out a game against Maliss if they commit to a big Link 3 or something like that, and you suspect they're on minimal follow-up. The strike can just end their turn. You can also strike the normal summon. If they get a normal summon effect and you strike it, they can't chain the trap to dodge that, and then a lot of times that can leave them stranded. It's not always a turn ender against them, but it does definitely help the matchup quite a bit. And it's just a generic like summon negate or monster effect negate. So like this into rogue options, this into Ryzeal, this into Blue Eyes is certainly not bad. It's just definitely in there mainly for the Maliss matchup. Call by the Grave we talked about in the main deck section. Ulti Slayer is an answer that people have to Ryzeal. It allows you to kind of like Metaltronus out their detonator without them being able to respond to that, which is nice. However, I think a number of top decks that I've been seeing recently have also been pivoting over to the Xyz Encore option, mainly because that is something that you can chain. It's a quick play, and that helps you play around something like Abyss Dweller, which Abyss Dweller can be really annoying to play around if your deck cares about graveyard effects. And so having that as something that you can activate and your opponent can't respond to it at all can be nice to have too. But Ulti Slayer is great for the detonator, outs it, and a lot of people are playing it for that reason. Dimensional Barrier, another answer to Ryzeal. This is seeing a bit less play, but still a solid amount of play in the side deck as another answer to Ryzeal. You can play fewer copies if you're playing the Thrust package, which is why this number is so low, but Dimensional Barrier is being played, again, just to check Ryzeal, really. It's also decent into Blue Eyes. Calling Synchro against Blue Eyes makes their board a lot weaker. They can still, like, probably crack your board thanks to Tyrant Dragon, but at least they're not setting up, like, Double Spirit on the crackback. And then against Ryzeal, calling Xyz can just end their turn. If they're playing pure Ryzeal, it's literally game over. If they're playing Ryzeal Fiendsmith, it's a lot worse. So I think that's another reason why people aren't playing it as often, is the Fiendsmith variant plays so well into it. But yeah, all in all, Dimensional Barrier is a solid card. Definitely something you should be expecting to see sided in either against you or something you should consider when building your side deck. But yeah, that's the meta snapshot. That's the how Yu-Gi-Oh stands at the moment. I think that went longer than I expected, but there was a lot to talk about. A lot of new cards, a lot of new decks. Overall, I think the format's in like a decent-ish spot. I'd love to see on an upcoming ban list checks to Ryzeal and Maliss, given the fact that they're so dominant at the moment. But you do have a lot of diversity at this like tier 2 level with stuff like Blue Eyes, Ryzeal Mitsurugi, Mermail Atlantean, Fire King, White Forest. Even Memento is getting a solid amount of tops. And so there are a lot of options at this lower power level, and I'd love it if they like just brought Ryzeal and Maliss down kind of to this power level, which I don't think would be too hard. Then we get to really see a diverse format up at the top with a lot of different options you're able to play. But that's just kind of me coping a little bit. If you have any decks that you wanted me to cover that I missed, go ahead and let me know down in the comments below. I'm always looking for different feedback and options on how I can make this series better. If you have thoughts just in general on how I can make the series better, if there's something you didn't like about how I did this, please also let me know in the comments so I can fix that. And if you want to see more content like this, go ahead and drop a like so I know that people like this series. Go ahead and check out the rest of my channel. I've got a couple other meta snapshots if you want to take a peek back at Yu-Gi-Oh's history. I make deck profiles, tons of other Yu-Gi-Oh content, so while you're there, why don't you go ahead and subscribe as well. It doesn't cost you anything. You can always change your mind later, and we are so close to 100 subscribers. It would mean the world to me. But with that, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!